You're 40,000 years old. Not you personally, your body. The lump under your ribs has been growing for 6 moons, and nobody in your camp has a word for it. There's no doctor. There's no diagnosis. There's just a hard mass that wasn't there before, and a quiet fear that something inside you has turned against you. Tonight, the elders are talking in low voices near the fire. They're not talking about food. They're talking about you. This is the part nobody tells you about prehistoric life. It wasn't just saber-toothed cats and frozen winters. Sometimes the danger came from inside your own cells. And here's the unsettling truth. Cancer isn't a modern disease. It's not something we invented with plastic and processed food. It's older than humanity itself. It's older than mammals. Scientists have found it in dinosaur bones. Let that sit for a second. 150 million years before a single human walked upright, something inside a dinosaur's leg was already dividing out of control. Cancer didn't wait for us to build cities. It didn't wait for cigarettes or microwaves or Wi-Fi routers. It was baked into the operating system of multicellular life itself. So why does it feel like a new epidemic? That question is about to break your brain a little. Here's what almost nobody understands about your own body. Right now, as you read this, some of your cells are trying to become cancer. Not might. Every single day, your body produces mutated cells that ignore the rules. Cells that refuse to die on schedule. Cells that decide they'd rather multiply forever. Your immune system hunts most of them down before breakfast. You never even know it happened. You've been surviving a war inside your own skin since the day you were born. Now picture your ancient ancestor, 40,000 years ago, crouched by a river, gutting a fish with a stone blade. Their body is running the exact same war. Same mutated cells. Same rogue division. Same silent battle happening in real time. The difference isn't biology. The difference is what happens next. And that difference is about to change how you think about medicine, evolution, and your own mortality. But here's what scientists actually found when they started digging through ancient bones. And it's not what you'd expect. Egyptian mummies, Neanderthal fossils, Bronze Age skeletons. Tumors show up again and again, carved permanently into bone the way a scar never fades. One of the oldest confirmed human cancers was found in a 1.7 million-year-old hominin fossil from South Africa. A bone tumor in the foot, discovered hiding in plain sight for over a century before anyone noticed what they were looking at. Which means cancer wasn't waiting for the 21st century to show up. It was there when our ancestors were learning to walk upright. It was there before fire, before language, before we had a word for disease at all. So if cancer has always existed, why does the world act like it's exploding right now? Like it's some brand new plague chasing us down? That's the reframe. That's the moment everything you thought you knew gets turned upside down. The uncomfortable answer is this. Cancer isn't more common today because the world got more dangerous. It's more common today because we got better at not dying from everything else. Read that again. For almost all of human history, the average person didn't live long enough to develop most cancers. They died from infection, from childbirth, from a bad tooth turning into blood poisoning, from a broken leg that never healed right. Cancer is, in a brutal sense, a disease of survival. A disease you have to live long enough to earn. Think about that the next time someone says cancer is unnatural. It's not unnatural. It's what happens when a body that was built to last 30 or 40 years gets pushed to 70, 80, 90. Evolution never optimized you for old age. It optimized you for reproduction, for raising children to the point where they could survive without you, and then it stopped caring. Cruel? Maybe. But understanding this single fact rewires how you see aging, disease, and your own body's countdown clock. Here's where it gets even stranger. Your ancient ancestors weren't just dying young by accident. In some cases, early death may have actually protected the species. A body riddled with cancer at 25 doesn't survive to pass down whatever genetic glitch caused it. Natural selection is merciless like that. It doesn't care about your suffering. It only cares about what gets copied into the next generation. Which means, in a horrifying way, prehistoric humans who were prone to cancer were quietly edited out of the gene pool before they ever got the chance to develop it. Modern medicine broke that filter completely. We now keep people alive through their 40s, 50s, 60s, decades past when our ancestors' bodies were designed to check out. And every extra year is another year for a single rogue cell to slip past the immune system's checkpoints. Another roll of the dice. This is the part that should genuinely unsettle you. The very success of medicine, antibiotics, sanitation, vaccines, is part of the reason cancer feels more present in our lives than ever before. We didn't get sicker. We got harder to kill any other way. Now connect this to something closer to home. Ever notice how modern humans panic over invisible threats? A strange noise at night, an unfamiliar shadow, a stranger's face that feels off? That instinct is ancient. Your ancestors survived by treating uncertainty as danger. And cancer plays into that same primal wiring, except this time the danger isn't outside the cave. It's inside your own cells, and you can't see it, smell it, or run from it. No wonder it terrifies people more than almost any other disease. Our brains are still wired for threats we can fight or flee, and cancer refuses to play by those rules. But here's what scientists actually found when they studied ancient diets versus modern ones, and it complicates the story even further. It's tempting to romanticize prehistoric life as some kind of cancer-proof paradise. No sugar, no chemicals, no screens. But that picture is incomplete. Ancient humans were exposed to carcinogens too. Smoke from constant open fires filled lungs for decades. Moldy stored grain produced toxins linked to liver cancer. Sun exposure with zero protection scarred skin for a lifetime. The natural world was never actually cancer-free. It just killed you with something else first. This is where the myth of the perfectly healthy caveman falls apart. Prehistoric life wasn't a wellness retreat. It was a gauntlet. Parasites, infections, violence, starvation, childbirth complications. The list of ways to die before 40 was staggering. Cancer existed in that world too, quietly, patiently, but it rarely got the chance to finish the job before something faster took the body first. Modern life didn't invent cancer. It just gave cancer more time to finish what it started. What you're about to hear was hidden from most history books, buried under the assumption that ancient people simply didn't get sick the way we do. But paleopathologists, scientists who study disease in ancient remains, have found tumors, bone lesions, and cancer signatures across nearly every era of human history they've examined. The evidence was always there, literally fossilized. We just weren't looking hard enough, or we didn't want to see it, because it's more comforting to believe cancer is a punishment for modern living than an ancient, unavoidable glitch in the code of life itself. Here's the part that should make you sit up straight. Some researchers now argue that cancer rates may have actually been proportionally similar across history, once you correct for how long people actually lived. A 25-year-old hunter-gatherer and a 25-year-old office worker today have roughly comparable cancer risk for their age. The difference isn't that ancient humans were immune. It's that almost none of them lived long enough for us to find out. So why does it feel like cancer is everywhere now? Because it is everywhere now, not because bodies got weaker, but because more of us are finally reaching the age where cancer becomes statistically likely. We built a world where predators, plagues, and famine mostly can't touch us. And in that safety, the oldest threat of all, the one written into our own DNA, finally has room to breathe. It's almost poetic, in the darkest possible way. We conquered almost every external enemy, only to discover the final enemy was inside us the entire time. Now here's a question that might make you uncomfortable. If cancer is this ancient, this built-in, this unavoidable byproduct of simply being alive long enough, can we actually cure it? Or are we trying to switch off a process that's been running since the very first multicellular organism decided to stick two cells together? That question is exactly why cancer has been so brutally hard to defeat, even with billions of dollars and decades of research thrown at it. Because here's the truth researchers don't like putting on fundraising posters. Cancer isn't one disease. It's not like a virus you can vaccinate against or a bacteria you can kill with antibiotics. Cancer is your own cells using your own DNA, following rules that were written by the same evolutionary process that built your heart and your brain. Attacking cancer means attacking a version of yourself. That's what makes it so different from anything else medicine has ever fought. You're not fighting an invader. You're fighting a mutiny. Think about what that actually means for treatment. Chemotherapy doesn't target the cancer the way an antibiotic targets bacteria. It targets rapidly dividing cells, which cancer cells are, but so are hair follicles, so is your gut lining, so is bone marrow. That's why chemo makes hair fall out and makes people violently sick. You're not bombing an enemy base. You're carpet bombing your own city because the enemy is wearing your own uniform and hiding in your own buildings. This is exactly why curing cancer was never going to be a single breakthrough moment, no matter what headlines promise every few years. There is no single lock to pick, because cancer isn't one disease wearing one disguise. Breast cancer and pancreatic cancer and leukemia can have wildly different genetic causes, different growth patterns, different weaknesses. Curing cancer is a bit like trying to cure car accidents with one single fix. The category is too broad. The causes are too different. And evolution had millions of years to make sure the process driving cancer was resilient, redundant, and nearly impossible to fully shut off. Here's where the story gets darker, and it connects straight back to that prehistoric human by the fire. Evolution doesn't actually want to prevent cancer in the way you might assume. Evolution only cares about keeping you alive long enough to reproduce and raise your offspring to independence. Once that job is done, your body's built-in defenses against cancer start to weaken, almost like nature simply stops paying attention. You were never designed to be protected forever. You were designed to be protected just long enough. That's a brutal thing to sit with. Your body isn't failing you when cancer shows up later in life. In a strange, cold way, it's doing exactly what it evolved to do. It got you through childhood, through your reproductive years, through raising the next generation, and then the warranty quietly expired. Modern medicine is essentially trying to extend a warranty that evolution never intended to offer in the first place. No wonder it's proving so difficult. Now here's a modern parallel that should hit uncomfortably close to home. Think about how many people push their bodies for decades. Stress, poor sleep, constant low-grade inflammation, telling themselves they'll deal with it later. Ancient humans didn't have that luxury of denial because later rarely came. But we do have that luxury now, and it means we're the first humans in history routinely living long enough to face the consequences of decades of accumulated cellular damage. We didn't escape our ancestors' fate. We just postponed the deadline. But here's what scientists actually found that flips the whole narrative one more time. Some cancer researchers now study animals that almost never get cancer, like elephants and naked mole rats, to understand what evolutionary tricks they developed that humans never got. Elephants have roughly 20 times more cells than humans, which mathematically should mean 20 times more cancer risk. Instead, they get cancer far less often than we do. Their cells evolved extra backup copies of a gene that forces damaged cells to self-destruct before they can turn dangerous. Humans got one copy. Elephants got 20. Nature apparently played favorites, and we weren't the favorite. Why does that matter to you specifically? Because it proves cancer resistance isn't some impossible fantasy. It's biologically achievable. Evolution has already solved it in other species, and scientists are now trying to reverse engineer those same tricks into human treatment. Some of the most promising modern cancer research isn't happening in a lab built from scratch. It's happening by studying the ancient evolutionary arms race other species already won. Let's go back to your ancestor by the fire, the one with the lump under their ribs. In that world, there was no elephant gene to borrow, no chemotherapy, no biopsy. There was only the slow, terrifying process of watching something take over a body from the inside, with absolutely no way to explain it, let alone stop it. Some cultures believed illness like this was a curse, a punishment, an evil spirit that had crawled inside a person while they slept. Can you blame them? If you saw a healthy person slowly consumed by something invisible, wouldn't you reach for the most terrifying explanation available too? That fear didn't disappear. It just changed shape. Ancient humans feared curses and evil spirits. Modern humans fear genetic test results and biopsy phone calls. The specific language changed completely, but the raw, primal terror of something is growing inside me that I can't control has stayed exactly the same for tens of thousands of years. This is one of the clearest threads connecting ancient psychology to modern anxiety. The fear of the invisible enemy inside your own body has never left the human species, not for one single generation. Here's a pattern interrupt worth sitting with. Have you ever noticed how much modern self-help culture is obsessed with listening to your body, trusting your gut, catching problems early? That instinct is ancient survival wiring repurposed for a world with hospitals instead of shamans. Except here's the unsettling twist. For most of human history, listening to your body wouldn't have saved you from cancer at all. There was no early detection, no scan, no blood test. By the time a tumor was visible or painful enough to notice, it was almost always too late to do anything but wait. Which raises an uncomfortable modern question. We now have the tools ancient humans never had: imaging, screening, blood markers, genetic testing, and yet millions of people still avoid getting checked, still ignore symptoms, still delay the appointment out of fear. In some strange way, we've inherited the instinct to avoid confronting the invisible threat, even now that we finally have weapons to fight it. Ancient humans avoided facing cancer because they had no choice. We sometimes avoid it even when we do. Let's push further into darker territory now, because what comes next is the part most documentaries skip entirely. Some anthropologists believe certain cancers in ancient populations may have been misinterpreted as something else completely: possession, punishment from ancestors, contamination from a broken taboo. In some archaeological sites, skeletal remains showing clear signs of tumor growth were found buried apart from the rest of the community, in unmarked ground, without the usual burial rituals given to others. Whether that separation came from fear, misunderstanding, or something colder, we may never fully know. But the pattern shows up again and again across cultures that had no contact with one another. Sit with that for a second. It suggests that across completely separate, disconnected human societies, thousands of miles and thousands of years apart, there may have been a shared, independent instinct to isolate the sick, to physically distance the community from something that couldn't be explained, seen, or fought. Sound familiar? It should. That exact same instinct, isolate what you don't understand, reappeared in modern history again and again, in disease outbreaks separated by centuries, right up through events within living memory. We like to think we've evolved past primal fear-driven behavior. The archaeological record says otherwise. Now here's the final escalation, the part that reframes everything you've just heard. For most of human history, cancer wasn't survived. It wasn't treated. It wasn't even understood as a disease with a cause and a mechanism. It was simply endured in silence, often alone, often blamed on the sick person themselves. And here's the truly disturbing part. In many ancient and even relatively recent societies, a person visibly wasting away from an unexplained illness wasn't just feared. They were sometimes blamed, accused of bringing it on themselves through some hidden sin, some broken rule, some moral failure. The tumor wasn't seen as bad luck. It was seen as evidence of guilt. Think about how insane that sounds now, punishing someone socially or otherwise for a random mutation in a single cell, a biological glitch with zero relationship to morality or behavior. But before you feel too superior to your ancestors, ask yourself honestly, how many people today still whisper questions like, what did they do to deserve this? Or quietly wonder if someone's cancer came from stress, from bad choices, from something they could have prevented if they just tried harder? That instinct to moralize illness, to hunt for someone to blame, including blaming the sick person themselves, is disturbingly ancient. We've dressed it up in modern language about lifestyle factors and risk behaviors. But underneath, it's the exact same impulse that once got sick people buried outside the village, apart from everyone else. This is the darkest thread running underneath this entire story. Cancer has never just been a biological event. It has always, across every era of human history, been a psychological and social event too. Something humans desperately tried to explain, moralize, or assign blame to, because the alternative was accepting a truth that's almost too frightening to hold. That this can happen to anyone, for no reason at all, regardless of what they did or didn't do. Randomness terrifies humans far more than danger does. We can prepare for danger. We cannot prepare for randomness. And cancer, at its cold biological core, is randomness wearing a body. So where does that leave us now, 40,000 years after that person crouched by the fire with a lump under their ribs and no name for what was happening to them? We have scanners that can find tumors the size of a grain of rice. We have treatments that didn't exist even 20 years ago. We have genetic sequencing that can map the exact mutation driving a specific cancer in a specific person. And yet, in the most important sense, We're still fighting the same ancient war our ancestors were fighting. A silent mutiny happening inside our own cells, following rules written by evolution long before humans existed to understand them. Maybe the real reason we still can't fully cure cancer isn't a lack of intelligence, funding, or technology. Maybe it's because we're trying to overwrite one of the oldest, most deeply embedded processes in the entire history of life on Earth. A process older than dinosaurs, older than mammals, older than the very idea of a human being. We're not fighting a modern disease. We're negotiating with something ancient, patient, and written into the same code that gave us the ability to grow, to heal, to reproduce, to exist at all. The same machinery that builds you is the machinery that can eventually turn against you. And maybe that's the most unsettling thought to end on. The very thing that makes you alive, cells that grow, divide, and rebuild you every single day, is the exact same thing that, given enough time and enough bad luck, can eventually try to consume you from within. Your ancestor by that ancient fire wasn't fighting some rare curse. They were experiencing the same fundamental risk every living, growing thing on this planet has always carried, quietly, invisibly, since the very first cell learned how to divide. The next time you take modern medicine for granted, remember this: you're not just living longer than your ancestors. You're living long enough to finally meet an enemy that was inside all of us the entire time.